Well, good morning. I'm recording this message in case we have any glitches on technology. We're looking to have a Zoom meeting and different things going on as well. But here's my message for the 29th of March. Um, I call this message, What a Faith Opportunity. What a Faith Opportunity. And I'm going to start from there. So I'm just going to pray, Lord, just ask your heart would be seen and shown to me and us. This is strange and challenging for me and for all of us right now. But I ask that you would be here. You would meet us and you would speak to us today. In Jesus' name. So, what a faith opportunity. Just a few days ago, we're wondering, where's all the toilet paper? You see memes on TV about people going and buying a cup of coffee and giving out 3 sheets of toilet paper. It was hilarious. We have concerns over jobs, it's deep concerns, and I certainly don't know everything that's going on. I'd love the feedback. If you're concerned about your job, if you're going to be laid off or furloughed, if my daughter and son-in-law, Abby and Yusuf, they work at Bonefish and they have no work. They're just staying home. They were going to a wedding. They had to cancel the trip to Barcelona for Yusuf's, I think, brother or sister getting married there, and so it's impacting so many things. There are people who have businesses, and we went to a local restaurant here and ordered some breakfast at lunchtime just to try to support local people we know in the midst of all this craziness. People are trying to buy and sell houses, do repairs, do work, do construction, cabinets, everything, and it's all impacted. And I think in these times when we're used to things working a certain way, and when they no longer work that way, and we have concerns about our future. So for me, when this whole thing started, I took a week just to think about what's going on here, what's happening. God, what is this? And I came away with some general conclusions. The first one is I didn't want to jump into any rash decisions. I wanted to peacefully, prayerfully. I know that most decisions that I've ever made out of fear have been very bad. But the decisions I make out of faith, even though they might be difficult, I'm not saying they're easy, have resulted in good things occurring to me. So I took time just to think what's going on here. And I've done some recordings on the Vineyard Legacy members webpage, Facebook page, and there's some thoughts there. I encourage you to go check those out. But as I was thinking and pondering and wondering what's going on, I just don't like the idea of feeling forced to be like, it's almost like this, almost like a spirit of panic, like anxiety, like and who makes great decisions in that place? Now, for me, maybe being a trial attorney, maybe being who I am from my past life, dealing with difficult problems, in the vineyard as a leader, trying to do mediation, reconciliation in churches that I helped oversee and helped with pastors. I think there's a place where you just have to be chilled to the core. Sometimes when you're screaming a little bit on the inside, you're like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But you're like, okay, God, you have to me, there's a discipline. I shared that the other day. It's almost like taking the reins of your will. And where are you going to point your life? And so I waited, I pondered, I thought, well, God, what's going on here? And I just felt the need to pray because I haven't been through this. None of us have been through a pandemic, unless you can recall it. You got to be at least 105 or 110 to remember the last one, the Spanish flu of the 1918 era. They had no penicillin, they had no antibiotics, they had no nothing. And those were It was a serious time. It was very scary as well. But I think where we are, I think there's a lot of hard things that are happening. I think there's a lot of isolation. I've talked to some people, and the extroverts are so totally understanding their need to connect with people. One of my favorite Facebook memes was, "Hey, introverts, quit reading your book. Go check in with your extrovert friends. They are not okay." I thought that was hilarious because I'm married to I was going to say crazy over the top extrovert. I guess I can go with that. A very extremely extroverted person. And I know how it's bothering her. But let me give you a little context on why I feel the freedom not to be driven by a herd mentality. I think it goes back to some of the early philosophy in college and the Greeks and classic Greek philosophy and Socrates. Like, why settle for the mediocrity of society? If you're just going along with the herd, you are settling for mediocrity. And for me, in the pursuit of excellence in all that I do, I didn't want to settle for mediocrity. And so when I see a herd and I see fear trying to drive us, I see panic or anxiety, I immediately have to, there's like a speed bump inside me. It's more than a speed bump. It's like a wall. It goes, stop, halt, wait. What is really happening here? And for me, I usually do pretty good in hearing God on those things if I have time. But in the midst of the busyness, it's sometimes harder to hear that. But I have to acknowledge that there are people in our church, in our community, who are certainly suffering and struggling. And I think this is an opportunity for us as a people to really step up and step into not just new technology, but to really engage in people's lives. Anyway, so let me give you some context to how I approach this thing. I remember being probably 8 years old, and we saw a video about pollution. And it was a good video. I didn't like pollution. I don't like factories pouring all this gunk into our rivers and killing them, and they smell nasty and all this stuff. And so I had that. I was just a little kid, But then I remember in the 70s, seeing the cover of Time or I think it was Time or Newsweek, saying, "Yeah, the coming ice age is coming." And there were a whole list of, we won't be able to grow food, the seasons will be shortened, and all this land will be taken back, and massive movings. And you're like, okay. Didn't happen. And that was ice age, global cooling. I then remember, I became a Christian in 86, and then around many of the evangelical circles, or the people that I saw, was 88 reasons why Jesus is returning in 1988. And I'm like, really? And so I looked at that, and I would have to say there's been at least 10 of those things come up to me since I became a Christian, where, Jesus is returning. You need to hoard things. I remember a prominent politician in 1992 saying we only have 12 years to save our planet. And you're like, and I remember saying, because of global warming. I'm like, well, which one is it? I don't want to deny the science. I don't want to deny the reality. I want to have honest exchanges, but sometimes so much politics and agendas get involved in that. And face it, we are in a culture that lies can be very effective. Lies, and there's just misinformation. So I always want to pause. But I'm like, let's go back to the 88 reasons why Jesus returns in 88. We have, so in 1992, I was told we had 12 years. So then that brings me to 2004. Oh, wow, I'm still here. What's going on here? Then we had Y2K. And for those, I'm doing the history because some of people may not remember it. And if you're older than me, you probably have a few more stories to share too. And so Y2K comes up, and everything's going to be falling apart. Everything's going to be going crazy. And that the computers are going to shut down. There's a glitch in them. So I was in Costa Rica, and there was a group of people who started coming to the International Vineyard there, who were like survival types from the States. They fled the States, and they said, you can't go back. It's like, this is 1999 and a couple months and before it happened, maybe 6 months. You can't go back to the United States. I'm like, well, what do you need to move here to Costa Rica. I'm like, well, why is that? And I just been doing a prophecy conference, seeing God do great things, and I said, why is that? He says, well, because the computer grid's going to go down. That's our only defense. The Chinese are going to launch nuclear missiles, and they're going to blow up the major cities. And you're from Chicago. Your whole family's going to get nuked. And I had to turn and pause. And this is that long ago. But I've been walking with God probably at that time, 13, 14, I don't know, 23 maybe. It's a few more years than that. And I felt like there's like urgent. I think it was 13 years. Urgent. And I paused and I'm like, okay, God, what do I say? I said, you guys think I hear God? And they said, well, yeah. Oh, yeah, man, you do hear God. And I said, well, I have a couple options here. That he either he'll tell me if he wants me to move to Costa Rica, he'll tell me. Do you believe I can hear that? And he goes, yeah. I said, so he'll tell me, interrupt me, God, tell me what you want me to do. And I said, God, interrupt me and tell me what you want me to do. Then I said, but what happens if he doesn't tell me? Does that mean my life's a failure if I don't survive? I said, maybe he wants me dealing and loving and caring for people, praying for people who have radiation sickness. Who knows what God wants to do? I said, so my whole mindset was that wherever I am, God is going to be with me. Wherever I go, God is going to be with me. Whatever happens, he is good. He's for me. And I didn't allow the fear to dominate me at that time. I then know there's a bunch of reasons. I'm going to move on. It's in 2008 why everything's going to fall apart. We had the Mayan calendar, and then I think in 2018 I heard someone else say that we have 12 years to save the planet, and I'm like, been there, done that. I heard that in '92. And so sometimes people think I don't believe in science, or I don't trust it, and I don't trust these things. The truth is, I don't trust the information given to me, especially when it's fear-mongering and it's trying to isolate and divide groups of people against each other. And that's kind of where I come. So I guess my last thought is, and maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but I then Googled after I wrote down a list of my apocalyptic crazy things that have happened and predictions that were there. I went to Wikipedia and the dates of predicted apocalypse, and I'm like, oh, you know how many I didn't list? I didn't know. I probably only got a tenth, the ones I listed in my lifetime of all these other crazy predictions of gloom and doom and I just would say this, that I believe God is in control. I believe, I think it's Jeremiah 10:23. I memorized this like when I was a new Christian, first time through the Bible. I started crying when I read this verse. It was like God grabbed a hold of me in my room, and it was like, I know, O Lord, it's not for man to direct his steps. Correct me, Lord, in your mercy, not in your wrath, lest you reduce me to nothing. And there's a sense there, Lord, I know it's not for man to direct his steps. I have up to that point had, here's my purpose. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow Jesus, but I still wanted to be in charge. Tell me what you want me to do, God, and I'll go do it. And there's kind of that human driven, I'm in charge, I'm in control thing. And I find that the more we seek to have control in our life, the easier it is for fears to get a hold of us. So it's kind of that paradox, is that in surrendering the control, I found freedom and peace. But in the pursuit of ongoing control to keep my act together, it's traumatic and it's overwhelming and it's dark and woe is me. So it could easily lead me to a conclusion of being cynical about everything that I hear. And I want to tell you, I am cynical about a lot of things I hear. And if I think it is game changing, I make the decision to investigate that bit of information. The problem with that, you know what I'm admitting to? I don't trust the information I get from almost anywhere. Unless I have the guy testifying, sorry, it's the lawyer again, the guy testifying, the doctor saying this, having contrary opinions. I don't care. Give me three doctors and three different opinions. That's welcome to the law. Welcome to litigation. And then we try to come to the truth when we wrestle through these things. Who's most credible? What is their finding? What are the basis of it? I just look at that. I evaluate life in that place. I don't trust in a world where people are not righteous. I just can't trust those people's opinion because I see the fruit of them trying to create a panic, an anxiety, a kind of just this crazy intensity. I'm thinking of like the whole bunch of lemmings running off a cliff. You're like, you get scared, oh, and we all run off the cliff together. I can't do that. I would rather be slow and pause. Hit the pause button. Hit the speed bump. Oh, I hit a speed bump. What the heck's going on here? Pause. It's never bad to ask good questions. It's never bad to challenging questions. Well, what about this, Ed? And what about that? I was talking to Kurt Jurgens on something, and he had a contrary opinion. I'm like, oh, thanks. You know, like, I don't even know if I said, oh, thanks, but I really appreciated a contrary opinion. I was talking to my son-in-law about issues of diversity and stuff, and I'm like, I'm probing. I want to give me a contrary opinion. Tell me this, because I want to be a seasoned, wise person. I want to understand. I want to grow in those things, and for me, I don't think that's a need for control. I think there's a quest for understanding, because I know the more I have understanding, the more it's like having tools in your tool belt to fix things, to understand how do you approach life. And so I would challenge you that even though I have a level of cynicism, I never believe there is no truth. So I might cynically approach things like, you got to prove that one to me, baby. You know, show me the evidence, give me the data. Here's another thing, a little pet peeve. And I'm like, man, you're assuming three variables in this thing. You're telling me this, and you're assuming this, this, and this. I object to this, this, and this. You can't prove those 3 points. And if you can't prove those 3 points, you can't prove your case. How do you make? I don't get it. So I stop. I pause, and I say, okay, God. 1, I don't want to be cynical. 2, I believe you have truth out there. 3, I'm not going to be fear-driven. And I guess 4th thing is, Lord, you're in control. It is not for me to direct my steps. It is not for man or person. I think they changed the NIV. I remember it was NIV. Now it's gender neutral in today's NIV. I know it's not for a person to direct their steps. It's not made for me to direct my steps. And what it shows me is, as broken as we all are, as finite as we all are, we need God to help direct our steps. But that also means not trying to be in control of everything. Let me just say that efforts to instill fear, in my experience, are generally, I shared in a video, there's rational, there's practical fears, and then there's irrational fears. But I find when, I'm just going to, for sake of time, say, when there's a panic thing, when you feel like there's this panic thing that tries to rest on you, you usually make terrible decisions. And it's usually not God in that. So let me say this. I believe God is in control. And I want to come to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This is from the book of Daniel. And I love this passage of Scripture. And it's about the king, and it's Daniel 3. And the king creates this golden image. It's 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. That's like 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. That's saying, hey, dudes, I am one rich dude, I am filthy rich, and I want you to come worship this idol. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were Jews, Hebrews, who were taken in captivity after the fall of Jerusalem, and they're there, and Daniel's there. This is like, again, the book of Daniel, and these were young people trained to work in the king's government, and they were the intelligent and smart people. So I'm going to pick up in verse 2 right here. And then he then summoned, this is the King Nebuchadnezzar, the satraps, the prefects, the governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, blah, 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 all these people to come to the image. And he told them all they needed to bow down to the image that the king had set up as they stood before it. And the herald loudly proclaimed, the herald, that's a great term because the gospels, the heralds, like gospelians, there's like, we are the heralds, we are the bearers, we're the king's messengers of the message. And so this is how things worked back then. And he proclaimed loudly, nations and peoples of every language. I don't know if he said it that way, but it's fun to say it that way. Nations and people of every language, this is what I command you to do. Verse 5, as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zephyr, the lyre, the pipes, the harp, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing fire. So, here are these guys. I worship the living God, and the king wants me to do this. I have some position, I have prominence, I have some influence in this thing. Hey, we're doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Things are going well. And now, the king says if we don't. And I don't think they did that. They could have said, oh my goodness, if the king's going to throw us into the fiery furnace, what are we going to do with this? But they stopped. They paused. And so he sets it up, and then the people did it. Except then, verse 8 says, and then some of the astrologers came forward to denounce the Jews, denounce these guys, because they did not bow down. May the king live forever, if they say. That's verse 9. Your majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn and all the instruments must fall down and worship the image of gold, and whoever does not fall down will be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. Quick, water, here. So then what happens? They get told them. They're narked, and they're like, they made a decision. Do you think they made it thoughtfully? Do you think they thought that the king was really in control? Or do you think they thought that there's a living God that I serve? There's a God who will rescue me or not. And I'm getting ahead of the story. I trust in God. My life is rooted in God. And it's amazing. The more deeply rooted you are, it's like the roots of a tree that go deep down into the water. And they're expansive. Rooted in Christ means the winds may blow, the hurricanes, the storms, but we endure because of our rooting into Jesus. So, furious with rage. Yeah! You're probably going to laugh at me on that one. Yeah! Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, and then he goes through, you need to do it again. And then he says, what God can save you from my hand? And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in verse 16 reply to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. That's just stop there. He's able to deliver us, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hands. Next verse. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty. We want you to know, your majesty. I don't think you could have a snotty attitude. Even if he does not, we want you to know, our majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. So, just think of mainland China, think of kingdoms, think of Hitler, think of government structures where there is a leader, the Greeks called it the tyrant, the head over everything. Their word was infallible. Their word, was gold. I would say like Genghis Khan, what he said went. You didn't cross him. You didn't sneeze in his presence, or you never know what happened. They're all powerful in the fullest of an earthly sense. They have the power, they have the army, they have the prestige. They're the guys. So the king was furious at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than the usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie them up and to throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the flame was so hot that the flames killed the soldiers who took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Just stop and let that picture that. The guys throwing them in are toast, and these 3 are thrown in the furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound, unharmed, and the 4th one looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach!" Hey, he can't get too close. He's going to get toasted. He came close. "Shadrach!" I don't know if he did that. That's not in the Bible. But let's go. "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come here. Come out." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. And then all the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their head singed. Their robes were scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. That's like the, whoa. There's something bigger than the king going on right here. There's something bigger than nature. There's something bigger than what we control or we thought we could do. We're going to control this people. We're going to make them worship our gods. We're going to force these things. God crushed that. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel to rescue his servants. They trusted him and defied the king's command, and were not willing to give up were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their God." Here's look at that. There's a couple points we can take from here. I have chosen, regardless of what is screaming around me, left, right, up, down, purple, green, it doesn't matter who's screaming, from what corner of the universe they're screaming, I say, I will serve God first. There's something about when you finally get that thing resolved, there's this like paradox that if you'll lose your life, you save it. When I finally say my life is not my own, it's not for me to direct my steps. When I lay that down, suddenly, it's like the whole, the opportunities, the ways of thinking, the freedom, the power of panic and terror and stuff, it just goes away if you'll surrender those things. And it's not like you surrender it once and it's done, because you'll find out down the road like, wow, I still really like this, and I thought I was going to get this. What's up, God? God, I put it in your hands. It's not for me to direct my steps. That was like one of my key phrases in the first 2 years of my Christian life. Oh, Lord, it's not for man to direct his steps. Tell me, teach me, correct me, show me what you're going to do. So, therefore, decree the people of every language or nation who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be cut to pieces, their houses be turned to piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. They had to go through the fire. Have you been through the fire? Are you going through the fire right now? You understand where we get that phrase. I've been through the fire. You're refined as in a fire. Just think of the refining. Do you think those guys came out the same? And often some people say that pre-incarnate Jesus was the angel of the Lord or the Son of God. That some would say either the angel or Jesus was there in the fire with them. A pre-incarnate visitation from God. That's one view. I'm not going to say that that's the only view. It could just be an angel rescuing them from the throne of God. I don't care which way it is. It's awesome. But they had to go, surrender their fears, say it's not my life. It's not for me to direct my steps. God is in control. I will not submit to a spirit of fear. I will not say these things that I have own me. No, the Lord is my giver and protector. The Lord provides for me. All the things I have are but His. I'm just a steward for a season of time for the things of God. So who is with you in the fire right now? Who is with you? So for me, I'm having a great time being the person who loves to pray. I'm like, I get to pray, I get to work out, I get to talk to people. I'm like, yeah, I'm loving. I shouldn't say I'm loving, because I'm missing seeing people on Sundays. I'm missing being able to go out and do some. There's things I'm missing, but I don't know that this to me it's been like a retreat, an invitation. You know, we get to see God do great things. So who's with you in the fire? The fire will show and reveal what lasts, what's important, what's significant. We have not been given a spirit of fear, the Bible says, but one of power and love and of a sound mind. A sound mind. A sound mind says, wait, pause. What's going on here? It assesses it. Anyone who says Christianity is about just cut off your brain, that's totally false. We are thinking, feeling, spiritual, emotional, physical beings. And God says it's all good. He didn't say, oh, your mind is only good, or your heart is only good, or your spirit's only good. He says we're all good. We're made in His image, the image of God. Jesus took flesh, took on human form. There's good in what He created. But don't allow fear to stop you. Fear, when it attacks, it can either seize your heart, to me, or seize your thinking. Don't let it have ownership of you. We've not been given that spirit of fear. You know, a sound mind is a place of being able to pause. And there's like a filter. Okay, God, what do you say? Just put that filter. God is with me. And the filter is, God, what do you think about this? And if you can't get an answer, there are a lot of people who would be glad to talk to you and pray with you. See, I've heard it put this way. Faith is a better guide than reasoning. Because reasoning can only take us so far. And I really agree with that. It's not that I'm irrational. It's just that the solutions are beyond my rationality. It's like like Edison envisioned an electric light bulb. He envisioned it. And he had over 10,000 tries, he and his staff, to come up with a solution. He didn't quit after 10 or 100 or 500 or 1,000 or 5,000, but it was 10,000 things. But he had a vision of what could be. He didn't have the facts. He didn't have the science. He didn't have it all figured out. And now we take for granted light bulbs. Yeah, duh. So what? God really wants to show you He's in charge and in control, if you will submit to that. There's a blessing that comes in laying down our lives for His purposes. Where are you in the fire, and who is with you in the fire? How are you responding to the fire of the time? We have not been given a spirit of fear. Faith is a better guide than reasoning, because what it says is whatever I understand, the solution may not be something I can figure out in my own ability, in my finite mental capacity. God, think all you want, but it's still finite, and the solution is often outside that. Edison had faith. Steve Jobs had faith that we could actually send messages over the airways. They thought he was crazy as a little kid. Just think of the dreams in his head. Think of all the people who have made such great impacts on our world. They're dreamers. Think of Joseph, the dreamer. Led him into trouble, but then he saved his people. Daniel is thrown into the lion's den. They throw him in there, and the lions don't eat him. Again, over worship stuff. The other people seeking to find a way to discredit, to take his position away. But Daniel then interprets the king's dreams. God gives him those dreams. We serve a sovereign, awesome God. So in this time, I'm just going to pray. But who's in the fire with you? Do you have is there a spirit of fear tormenting you? I would say one last thought is Psalm 91 says this: "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday." It's just talking about those who are God is with, God is for, and who are for God as well. So I think if there's anything here, we say, Lord, forgive me for giving myself over to a spirit of fear. Forgive me for thinking, immediately going to the panic. Forgive me for not pausing. And some of us in the isolation, it can be so aggravating. Talk to somebody. Pray through things. If you don't know how to connect with God, call somebody and say, hey, I'm having a hard time connecting with God. Talk to me. I know I've challenged a few people. They say, Ed, are we going to make it through this? And I'm like, well, you ask God. Why is that on me? You need to ask God. You figure that out. Because I want you to be able to endure, because God speaks to you. It doesn't become contingent upon me. We're in this together, but may God speak to you. And then if they come back and say, I don't know what's going on and it's really hard, and I'm like, okay, then we can go from there. But I want people to, get your hearing, get those faith muscles moving. Hey, I am not alone in the fire. Hey, there are people who are for me. If God is for me, who can be against? Just think of those things. So I know I turn to prayer and to preaching, but Lord, we ask your presence would come, bring peace, bring freedom, bring hope. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.